I've been thinking a lot about Jesus Christ and how his story contrasts with other major figures in what you might call the ascended masters category of spiritual beings. The one that comes to mind for me are Ram, Krishna, Buddha, and Muhammad. I've had a positive personal relationship with Ram and Krishna growing up. Neutral positive. And then more recently, especially with Hanuman, chanting their names has carried me through many a panic attack, particularly in the aftermath of my sexual trauma upheaval. These names, these stories, they have been anchors. Islam, on the other hand, lives in me with more complexity. I grew up in 90s Mumbai, a time that was scarred by Islamic terrorist attacks. And I come from the Marathi community where the story of Shivaji, our warrior king, who stood strong after centuries of Muslim conquest of India, runs deep. So my relationship to Islam is a bit tangled. And I'm just sharing this to share some of the personal context from which I am going to present these comparisons amongst the different ascended masters that I mentioned. And yeah, what's been really alive for me lately is noticing how among all these different ascended masters, the story of Jesus really stands apart. It's one of the most recent, the most torturous, and one that begins from the lowest level of privilege. So let's talk a bit about stories first. Stories that live and breathe. Rama and Krishna are significant deities, gods within the Hindu cultural sphere. And their stories are so ancient that their historical reality gets really hazy. I do think they are true stories. But then what does it even mean for a story to be true? I've come to believe that stories have life of their own, and the more they are told, the more they are heard, the more they live. And in that sense, the stories of Rama and Krishna are very alive. So many people have carried those stories for so long that they've shaped the spiritual field itself. Now, whether Rama and Krishna were humans or whether these were beings whose stories unfolded in spirit realms that were visible to ancient humans attuned to those planes, which is a real possibility I've sat with. It's entirely possible that we had some extra senses 5,000 years ago that have since been lost. I don't know. Their distance from history leaves that question open. The Buddha story, by contrast, is much more recent. I feel more confident that he was a real man who attained phenomenal spiritual realization. Enlightenment to me means a conquering of the reactive drive to be reborn after death. It's not avoiding death, but meeting it with full clarity. I believe no one can die until their time has come, and nothing can save you once it has. And really rooting in these two ideas leaves no fear of death, none at all. Not from a place of like hiding these suicidal parts of you that want to kill you, but just this place of clarity. And I really think the Buddha and Jesus conquered death in this way. Jesus was born low and bled hard, and that makes Jesus' story so singular. But the Buddha was born into incredible privilege, a prince in a powerful kingdom. His journey began in overindulgence and being so soaked in wine, food and women that he got sick of it. He chose this path of spirituality from a place of saturation. The same holds for Rama, Krishna, and Hanuman to a certain extent. They were all born into royal privilege. Rama felt the pain of exile, yes, And when Sita was kidnapped, Rama felt the pain in exile and when Sita was kidnapped, but he was still a king to be. And contrast all that with Jesus. Jesus was born to a shepherd. His family fled to Egypt to escape violence. He wasn't born with access or status. And that makes the arc of his life stand out in a really visceral way. Then there's the nature of his suffering. Jesus was welcomed with reverence by the people of Jerusalem. They gave him a king's welcome. And days later, after he had already been betrayed by Judas, who was one of his closest followers, those same people spat on him, mocked him, and stood by while he was tortured. And there is something to that bipolar swing in people's response to him, which feels very relevant to modern times, just given so many of these internal divisions and bifurcations that deep trauma has caused. And these bifurcations are more visible as the trauma is like emerging for so many humans, like ready to be released. But yeah, there is something devastating about that turn, like imagining so many humans gleefully welcoming you and then spitting on you in a few days. And it really reminds me of the importance to truly see where someone is acting from and respond to that instead of what it seems like they're acting from. Yeah, Jesus wasn't just killed, he was paraded, humiliated, and nailed to a cross in a punishment that was both excruciating and public. So I was at Revolt Church this week. It's a local church that I've been going to over the last couple of months. And it's like a fucking rock concert at 10 a.m. Yeah, like just stunning music sang in reverence to Jesus. And it's one of the few churches where I've felt that crying is welcome. And yeah, people are crying and people are praying for each other, and it's quite glorious in that sense. And it has like similar threads to what I've experienced at these other trauma healing containers at Easter, otherwise the grief ceremonies, you know, it's like just, it has that energy of like release, but the emphasis is on surrendering to Jesus in order to call forth that release. And every time I've been there, I've just like felt filled with spirit and just lightened and cried, and just I've emerged just lighter. I can feel it in my energetic body. So this Sunday, the pastor is also pretty amazing. I just love him. It's like a black man with great theatric personality on stage, and the way he channels the Bible, it's just like listening to a really good storyteller. Like the story of the Bible comes alive in him, the way he speaks it. And he's also openly MAGA, which I fucking love, which some of you may not like, the ones who are watching this video, but that's okay. We can have different political views and still discuss mysticism and spirituality. In fact, that's what makes it really juicy. And as he was walking us through this story, this is a very significant week right now in Christianity. Passover, Good Friday, Easter. What struck me about the story wasn't just the cruelty, but Jesus' response to it. Seemingly, Jesus could feel love for the people who betrayed him, the people who tortured him, and he could see it all coming. And there, again, it to me reveals the importance of knowledge. Like knowledge can really soften one's response. Like knowledge of the mind can really soften one's heart. And in kind of the embodiment culture, sometimes where people are trying to connect to their bodies, like they tend to dismiss the relevance of the mind. And here and many other places in my life, I've like really landed in this place of, oh, the mind is a powerful tool in the journey. Yeah, the level of presence it must have taken Jesus to stay open in the face of all of that, to still love, to not collapse into numbness or bitterness, just feels astonishing to me. So many of us either disembody or dissociate to escape pain, or we become so identified with the pain that we lose ourselves in the victimness of it all. But he seemed to do neither. He felt the betrayal, the humiliation, the physical agony, and he still loved. And in that sense, there is a parallel here to the middle way of the Buddha, because that was the Buddha's teaching too, like to walk the thin ridge of the middle way. There are like cliffs on either side, and you have to like really steadily walk the thin ridge of the middle way. Yeah, to feel the pain and still not take the betrayal and torture personally, and to love anyway, that's just astonishing to me. Yeah, there is something about this story that mirrors a dark arc in my own life. Early in my healing journey, I made a series of posts that I called Loving Torture, and these were poetic torture fantasies directed at one of my perpetrators. In one of those fantasies, I imagined sadistically slicing the face off him, because his face had become so entangled with the memory of my own rape that it enraged me to think of him. And this was particularly challenging because all of the memories I had recovered prior to the memory with this guy were ones where I was either being sodomized from the back or filleted. So I could not associate the action with the face. But the memory that I recovered with him was where he was like sodomizing me from the front, and I've written a lot about this before. Like, it was such a powerful moment to recover that memory, because I could see his like frozen anger, like the anger with which he was raping me, and behind that face, behind his like adult face that was raping me, I could also see like this inner boy that was twisting and turning away, like trying to like turn away from it all, which to me has since represented like his inner wound. Like, it's entirely possible that he himself was raped as a child, and his inner wound that was not addressed, he was able to connect to it because it would come alive in this like jarred manner when he was raping other children. But it was torturous for him too. But because of the division within himself, he could not feel the torture of it all. Yeah, but because I saw his face, in that moment where I was in my healing journey, and some of the stuff that I'm sharing came later on. It sounds all wise, but it came later on. But in those months after, my mind would be flooded with his face, like just driving me crazy with rage, and suicidal rage sometimes rage towards him. And then I made a covenant with myself, an agreement that I would direct the rage where it needs to go, towards him and nowhere else. And it actually really helped me maintain more equanimity in situations with other humans where I was getting triggered, because I would be able to acknowledge in that moment that there is unprocessed rage towards this guy that is emerging when I'm interacting with other humans, and I would just like channel all of that rage to him. And there were moments where I wondered, what am I going to do after he dies? Like, where do I channel? But then, like, even if a person dies in the physical realm, they still exist in the spirit realm, and you can still channel rage towards those who quote unquote deserve it. And this is a certain level of spiritual work. I think it is still helpful because it there is like, it brings a focus, it brings a directionality to rage. So it doesn't have to stay trapped within, it can go somewhere, but it's also not creating hurt in the physical layer. But back to the story, the specificity of his facial features had become too tightly tied to the trauma for me. And in my artistically dark imagination, if I could peel away the skin and see the flesh and bones underneath, he might look like everyone else, and the specificity of his facial features would be lost. And I would be able to see him finally for the human he is, underneath the association I have of my rape with him. Because, underneath our faces, we all look more or less the same. So yeah, I acknowledge this is really dark, very sadistic. And that fantasy was an artistic attempt to make sense of something unspeakable. It was a way to channel the longing for peace inside the messiness of all of the sexual trauma. A very twisted expression of something honest, the desire to see his humanity and to reclaim mine. But when I sit with Jesus' story, it completely flips that. It's not about torturing with love, it's about loving through torture, the complement of it. And I have wondered, like, if I'd actually gone through with my darkest plan to kidnap and live stream his torture, like if I'd actually done that, could he have looked at me with love? Like, what if he had done the spiritual work, or what if in that moment he was blessed with the divine, or I was blessed with the divine, and saw his eyes, in his eyes, the eyes of Jesus Christ? And that question just undoes me. It like really humbles me. It makes me grateful that I did not move forward with this plan. Like, I had started making, I had started exploring it pretty seriously, which has been its whole initiation. I think there is something, I think each of us has the power to kill, but most of us live disconnected from it, and it's a part of our humanity. And it really initiated me into that part of me, and I'm honestly grateful for it. Like, there is obviously occasions in my life where I need to act quickly and kill. Like, if someone is threatening my child in the future, like, there should be no freeze there. Like, it should be instantaneous. And I think prior to exploring this in depth, I've had a lot of freeze in between me and my obvious capacity to kill. And I've killed living beings in my life for sure, like ants and insects, and kind of not recognizing that doing that while not recognizing that I've had the capacity to kill was a blind spot, and this exploration really helped me tap into it. But the more I've explored Jesus' story, especially this like loving torturous love angle of it, the more remarkable it feels. Not just intellectually, but like viscerally. It's been touching me, inspiring me. The Buddha was born with some really good past life karma. He had a solid start in that lifetime to move towards enlightenment. And Jesus seems to have made it all happen in a single life. Of course, he probably had really good past life karma too, but it's more striking. Like, Jesus's journey is just more striking. And I think therein is born the Christian emphasis on this being the only life. Like, no do-overs, no karmic rollover, just now. And in some ways, it fits the way I see death. There is no guarantee of later. There is no next life, at least not one where you're going to remember this life. That Christian urgency, repent now, love now, return now, speaks to me really deeply. In India, where we have got lifetimes to spare, the cultural humor tends to lean the other way, and that reveals something. Like, people will joke about how, this life is for partying, I'll meditate in the next one, or youth is for partying, meditation is for old age, or I like clean up my act after retirement. And there is this like casual assumption that you can defer your soul's work because you'll have another shot down the line. But honestly, that mindset just comes from a poor understanding of karma, because by ignoring your soul's work now, you're not just skipping homework, you're actually sowing poor quality karmic seeds that are going to mature later, probably with interest. And this is where I start to see how the Christian concept of sin overlaps and maps over to the Buddhist understanding of karma. It's not really just a Buddhist understanding, it's also the Hindu understanding of karma. In Buddhism or Hinduism, your past karma is always ripening moment to moment. You're constantly receiving the fruits of past action, including things like rape. Like, they are absolutely fruits of past life actions, and really rooting in that is critical for those of us who get stuck in this like victim narrative around our own sexual trauma. Like, no, these are all, like, you may not know where it came from, but these are all karmic fruits that you're receiving. And the critical thing is, in that moment of receiving, you still have a choice. How you respond to the karma that is fruitioning determines whether it alchemizes and dissolves and you become lightened, or whether your reaction just sows new karmic seeds and creates further entanglements. If you lash out, numb out, or try to escape, that reaction itself plants new seeds, and the cycle continues in an even more dastardly manner. And I think this is what Christians mean when they talk about sin. Not just the breaking of a rule, but acting in a way that furthers your entanglement with suffering. Are you responding to life in a way that liberates you, or in a way that drags you deeper into misery? Because depending on how you respond, you're either dropping into a lower realm of existence or moving towards something more spacious. Buddhism lays out 27 different realms of existence. Christianity simplifies it, heaven or hell, but the logic feels related. And to be fair, all of these like 27 realms of human existence that Buddhist metaphysics covers, the Buddha was very insistent actually on not answering questions, these like intellectually fun questions. He was very insistent on only answering questions that directly help alleviate a human's suffering. And he would ignore and say no to these like idle curiosity questions that people presented to him, because he was, omniscient. He could answer anything, but he would actively just decline it. And he would say something like, this is not going to help you. I could answer it, but this is not going to help you. And I found that to be a really interesting boundary to hold. Like, it's a very principled boundary to hold. Like, I am not going to answer because this is not going to help you. Yeah, something to sit with. Now, I need to name my hesitance with Muhammad in closure. As I said earlier, there is complexity here. My upbringing in Mumbai, the trauma tied to terrorist attacks carried out in his name, and I haven't read enough of the Quran. And I do think it's okay to still speak and present opinions without full certainty, to name, because I'm naming where my blind spots might be. And certainty is fleeting anyway. And I often apply a litmus test when I think of how I want to live my life. And the litmus test is, what orientation would I take if I were looking through the lens of childhood sexual abuse? And the answer I find there is share even when you are uncertain. Because silence, self-doubt is what allows harm to continue. Like silence of the child being abused, silence of the non-perpetrating relatives, because there is this like major overall like collective freeze that no one's ready to speak and no one knows what to do, and that allows the harm to continue. And this is tracked in psychology as the bystander effect. And it's what keeps people from stepping in and doing something. So here's what I feel. Muhammad doesn't seem to me like an ascended master. He seems like a man who struck a powerful spiritual deal. But yeah, I don't see the light in him. I see a man who took a 6-year-old wife after becoming a prophet and then consummated the marriage when she was 9, which is essentially rape. Yeah, even in, and you know, I've heard of this argument of like, oh, things were different back then, and I'm just like, no, I don't think so. Like, if a 50-year-old man is, you know, going for a 6-year-old girl, to me that indicates that this man has not gained ascendancy over his lust, and that is like the lowest most layer. So if a man has not gained ascendancy over his lust, you know, he has not even crossed like the lowest chakra. This was also a man who commanded armies, and he's like unique in that, not in defense, yeah, it's like unique that there was someone who was a spiritual teacher and also commanded armies. I don't think Lord Rama aspired to be a spiritual teacher. Like, he was just living his life as a Kshatriya, as a warrior. And yeah, Muhammad commanded armies to spread a religion, and that just doesn't feel right to me. And sure, maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm missing something, maybe I've been shaped too much by the trauma of growing up in a terror-ravaged city. But yeah, when I think about reading the Quran, I notice my heart closes. I can't receive wisdom when my heart is closed. And that's not to dismiss the Quran. I think there is like many humans over the ages who have received tremendous guidance about how to live a good life in this physical human realm through powerful contracts with spirit entities, but have not fully ascended. You know, it's like they were flawed beings. And I think Jesus and Buddha were ascended and Muhammad was not. Yeah, then things get complicated here. Like, my own metaphysics is developing, so you know, don't get too triggered by it. We can talk about this openly. Yeah, I could even, you know, think I could memorize the Quran if I really put my mind to it, but even in that memorization, I wouldn't hear it. And it reminds me in some ways of how some people see Trump, how the pain or disgust they feel keeps them from seeing the Trump that I see. And so I'll say this: if you have felt the heart of the Prophet Muhammad, and if you do feel his light and want to share how to access it, I'm open, truly. You know, I've engaged in Sufi whirling practices often and wondered if that could be an avenue. And there is like another thread I'm tracking where a mentor of mine who does this kind of spiritual exorcism work, which is partly how I came to the Buddha, because to Jesus, because a lot of Jesus's work directly deals with like casting out demons, which in my mind are just like weak, poor quality spiritual beings that haunt and cause addictions and cause obsessive compulsive disorders, and all sorts of like physical issues. And lastly, yeah, I want to laugh at myself a bit here because I moved to North Carolina, started feeling aligned with President Trump, became like pretty strongly MAGA, bought a pickup truck, and now I'm exploring Jesus Christ. And it all feels like a caricature. And if it feels like that to you, you're seeing the caricature and feeling amused, know that I'm with you in the amusement and laughing with you. But the draw feels real, the story feels real, and the love of Jesus feels real. And I'm sitting with it and I'm listening. Thank you for tuning in today. And please leave your thoughts in the comments below. Would love to hear. And please like and share the video if you enjoyed watching it. Take care.